Welcome to the 98% podcast, where we hear real stories from real people, and we're celebrating a special milestone. So we just hit 30 episodes. So this is the 30 episode special where I go through the questions from episode 21 to 30, and I give my thoughts on those questions. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's see. So episode 21. So this was Max. So to recap his episode, so I liked Max's episode a lot because, one, he's one of the more recent people that I met. So he joined us for game nights. So we held game nights here, and we still do. We've just been we haven't been as good with hosting them every month, but we do it once a month. And it was basically like a friend of a friend of a friend, I think. So it started with David, who I went to school with, and we were friends. And then he brought Greg, who was his friend that he knew from college. And then Greg brought Max, which was his friend. So, and it's funny because we've been kind of like inseparable, like all of us together. Like we come over, we have game nights, we connect well, and we just vibe well from like day one. So his episode is neat because, one, I mean, we have conversations, but we haven't like had, deeper intellectual conversations. And Max is definitely an intellectual type. So it was fun hearing him kind of talk about a lot of the stuff with AI, I think, was like the big takeaway from that one, because he really kind of went down that path of AI and started talking about, artificial intelligence and how that does what it does, essentially. And I know he's a data analyst, I believe, and it's just kind of cool to kind of see his perspective from that point of view. We talked about a lot of different things. So I thought that was a really neat episode. So I know he travels a lot, so that was pretty cool too. So his question was, what is a regret you wish you could erase from your timeline? And this is tricky because we had another one in the last special that talked about regrets too. And regrets is kind of a weird thing. It's like I'll have regrets in the moment, but I don't know if I have regrets long term, just because that means I would be in a different place than I am, and I like where I am. So cop-out answer would be I wouldn't erase any regret from my timeline. But if I need to come up with something, let's see. So let's see. I don't know, it's a tough one. Because like I said, regrets are kind of an interesting topic for me. Because the thing is too, and I talked about this on the last episode, or a previous episode, is regrets are interesting because I also wonder how much of our life would be different. You could say that one specific choice can kickstart a whole timeline, essentially. But you could also say that, like, who's to say that whatever we do isn't going to come full circle, essentially, and we end up in the same place we were going to anyway. So maybe not at the same time, but what if we're all kind of destined to be kind of in a similar position? Just there's different paths to that, essentially. I don't know. It's an interesting question to think about. But trying to think. Because I could say one regret of mine, I guess, would be to erase it from the timeline. I don't know. Because I was going to say not learning some stuff sooner, but that's not really erasing anything. That would be kind of like learning something faster. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I would erase. To kind of stem off that question instead of erase, like I said, I could say, like a lot of the learning that I've done recently, over the past probably 3 or 4 years has been very exponential. And I didn't do it earlier, and I kind of wish I would have done a lot of that learning earlier. Like read some books, listen to some podcasts, do all this stuff, and just kind of intellectually kind of stimulate the mind, and I think that that's helped me a lot, and it's helped me to connect quite a bit more. I mean, I could also say, gaining empathy around that time was huge because I connect with people much better than I ever did. So learning empathy sooner would also be nice, or understanding emotions sooner. I guess maybe music is one. I think I do wish that I would have kept on with music a little longer. So, because I took like a hiatus. I mean, we stopped playing for like a decade or so, and there's a lot of headway we could have made during that time. But like I said, like if I would have stopped playing music then, I wouldn't be where I am now, but I might be performing music full time. I don't know. Either way, getting back into it has been really nice. And yeah, it's not like I ever stopped. I just stopped performing. But yeah, so that's a long answer. I know I don't have a good one for that, but that's a tricky question. And I've talked about regrets before on the podcast, so I have an interesting dynamic with that. So next episode, so episode 22. So this was Alex. So Alex was someone I worked with at Nike back in the day. So we worked together, and he worked at a couple different stores, 2 different stores in Kansas City. And I worked with him at both. Actually, I forgot he also worked in Iowa, and I worked with him there too, just because my role was a traveling training gig. But yeah, what I liked about Alex is it's funny because I spent a lot of time with Alex, but I never spent a lot of time with Alex getting to know him. And it was probably the same for him too. Like we worked with each other. Sometimes we talked. We had the best way to say it is I think we were good acquaintances, but I don't know if we had like a real relationship. And it wasn't until he came back in the store one day, and yeah, he was just you could tell like he just, I don't know, not at rock bottom, but he was in a low place, right? His dad just passed away and stuff, and you could see it on his face when he talked. And I just remember connecting with him a moment and just actually really relating with him, just as far as like, because I went through a little bit of loss during that time as well, in a different way. But yeah, so we really connected. I got his phone number, we chatted, and yeah, he was, he decided to be on the podcast. The cool thing is his podcast was super deep, and I would have never expected that because, to that point is we kind of had more of an acquaintanceship. Is that the word? Together. So it was kind of cool to see, to see that. And I know his episode, he talked a lot about, a lot of the deep stuff with his family, the family dynamics, the passing of his mom, his dad. And yeah, he just had a lot of loss. So he's just one of those people that, we're all going to experience loss. I mean, we all are, at some point in our life. He just lost a lot more sooner, I guess is a good way to put it. So it was a really touching episode. So, and it was cool. We got to do a workout beforehand. So we got to get all pumped and have a good time. And then we got to have the deep conversation. So I really admire that. I admire that how deep he went in that conversation. And, it built a whole new relationship between him and I, which I thought was really good. So, yeah. So his question was, what's your purpose while you are here? And I'd say the purpose while I'm here is the selfish answer is to express my creativity. So bring things into existence that aren't here already. And then the unselfish answer is to help the people around me, help support the people. And in my regard, because I think that means different things to different people. So I think, some people say, helping people is doing community events and charities and, food drives, like that stuff's all great. But when I think about my contribution, like don't get me wrong, I've done those things too, but I think my contribution is more about equipping people with knowledge and training people with things that can help their life be easier. So on a lot of the learning I do, I love learning those things that just change my life, and I want to just give that to everybody else, to share that so they can, hopefully like take that new knowledge and instill it in their life to where they can, move forward, be resilient, persevere. And I think those are always strong words that always stuck with me. It was resilience, perseverance, all of that. And I think that's why. And like, if you listen to my music, the lyrics are all around that. If you think about a lot of the stuff that I've done, like through work and through all the stuff, like it's just how it's always been for me. And I just always admired that. So, yeah, I would say that's my purpose, is to help people in that way by giving them tools to do better and to get on and to move forward with their life, and then to express my creativity into the world. Okay, so 23. So episode 23 was Rod Stone. So what I liked about Rod's episode is, what was really neat is I've known him since I was a kid. So I was a kid, and he's one of my dad's friends, and I remember going over there, playing with his kids, hanging out. I always thought Rod was, like the coolest guy, just always smiles, always friendly. You could always tell he was very intrigued in what what you're into and your interests were, especially, when you're a kid, when someone takes interest like that, it's nice because it feels good, especially as a kid. But what I really liked is that, even after all these years, he was talking to my dad, and my dad was like, "Hey, he'd like to be on your podcast." And I hadn't talked to him forever, and I was like, "Okay, give me his number." And we just talked, and he was super excited to do it. And what I like about Rod is he's had a lot of, film experience, right? So he was a producer on some big films. And he's done a lot of films in Hollywood, independent, a lot of stuff like that. And it's always something I was into. I was always into movies and stuff like that. So it's cool for him to hop on the podcast and talk about his story. And same thing, like there's a lot of things about his story I had no idea. Like his close encounter with death, essentially, when he was a kid, was just fascinating to see. And then to see how he persevered through that. Not only did he basically die on scene and then come back, but they said he would never that he would never be able to, that he'd have a learning disability essentially. And then he ended up getting straight A's and then he went on to do big things. So it's just cool to see how something so fatal could cause somebody to be so strong at the end of the day. So I really like that. So his question was, what legacy do you want to leave? And the legacy I want to leave is, I guess I just want to leave knowing that I had a positive contribution to the people around me and to society as a whole. I think that's, in my opinion, that's all you can ask for is, hopefully, my daughter and any future kids or anything like that grow up and they remember me and that I impacted them in a great way. And hopefully everybody felt that too, that I, made a lot of friends, impacted people positively, and that, it's sad, but, hopefully I'm, missed. And I would love to, just, be that person that, I guess they looked up to when I was here. So I'd say that's, legacy I want to leave. And if I can leave some, I think it's also why I like creating too, because those things will always last, I say forever, but, they'll last a long time. So like putting music out in the world, right? Those are, as long as internet and Spotify is a thing, those songs will outlive me. And I always thought that was fascinating to think about, is that I'm literally putting things out there that as long as those still exist, then if I'm gone, people are still going to listen to it. I'm saying this is podcasts, right? So these episodes, as long as the internet and YouTube, Spotify are still a thing, people are still going to get to hear me talk about the podcast. So that's why I think that's fascinating. So let's see, episode 24. So this is Danny Lebec. I realize I've interviewed a lot of Danny, so I need to be specific with who. But his episode is fun. So I worked with him at Nike. We're both trainers together. And he was the guy that, super tall, and you wouldn't know it like just by looking at a Zoom screen. But I happened to see him before that, so I knew he was tall before he was on Zoom. But I know it shocked a lot of our team members. But he's always like this. He's just, as far as positivity, he's like one of the most positive people that you'll ever meet. Like just really chill, cool, always is interested in what you're talking about, just always gives off these cool vibes. So I know he worked with me, and then he quit, and then he left the company, and then he went to this Ziggy's, so this coffee shop, and is pursuing that. And it was fun just kind of catching up with him and just seeing kind of how he's doing, because same thing, like we connected a little bit here and there at some of our summits and stuff for training, but we didn't really we had some deep conversations, but nothing like too deep. So it was fun to hear more about his story and kind of his his being a new homeowner and all that stuff with the business. So his question was, what book or article have you read that has been thought-provoking? So I got a few. So when I first went through my divorce, I wanted to figure out how to feel better. So I got into, everybody goes to self-help books and stuff, and there was a few different things I did. So I think the first thing I did is I was listening to, I think Jordan Peterson at the time was very helpful. So getting into just watching some of his lectures and just trying to find strength and kind of like things through what he said, and just realizing that I'm stronger than I think I am at that moment, right? Because in that moment, your self-esteem tanks and you kind of feel weak. Your confidence is no longer there. So I needed that in that moment. But I'd say it was a couple books that actually spoke to me the most. So one of them was The Subtle Art of Not Given an F by Mark Manson, and his other book, Everything is Effed. And it's like anti-help, self-help books. If you haven't read them, I highly recommend. And I like it because it took a different approach. Because I would read self-help and I would just think like, oh, come on, like it just it didn't feel real. It didn't feel authentic. It felt like people are just giving you like these theoretical models of like, to be perfect, this is what you do and stuff like that. And I just always questioned if these people were living what they preach, essentially, you know. And I think that's a big part because we don't really know to a certain extent, unless I know them personally, which I don't, not yet. When I do, that'd be cool. But what I like is I liked his approach. He always came up from kind of skeptic, kind of came up from a skeptic mindset. And what always was neat is well, the way he approached things was just, it's hard to explain. It was just fascinating. So like some examples is like he had in Subtle Art, he talks about it's a book of values, you know, and I always think about values as being like these really good things that you wish to achieve, essentially, that you live by, right? Like, you know, like a value of mine is creativity or honesty or integrity or stuff like that. And those are good things. But his thing was like, well, what if we flip that on its head? And what if we talked about, what if you embrace the things that suck, essentially? And that was awesome, right? Because you're looking at it, it's like, well, one value was that you accepted everything in your life as your responsibility. And it's like, wow, that's deep. Because, I mean, no matter how bad it is and how much you want to blame somebody else for your circumstances, at the end of the day, you're responsible for it. Like everything in your life, that person is part of your life for some reason. And I just thought that was fascinating. So there's that. Like, what if you embraced uncertainty? Because, right, people hate that. But what if you embraced it? What if you embraced failure? Um, you know, embrace mortality, right? Things like that. And I just thought that was a really cool way to look at it. But yeah, so that was one book, or those were two books. Highly recommend. And then I'd say the other one was Obstacle is the Way. That was just one that was a really good template for just getting through things, you know, just separating into three different parts. You know, it was perception. What was it? Perception, action, and will, I believe, are the kind of breakdowns. So, right, shifting your perception on what's happening. So basically finding the silver lining or looking at what it is in a different light. So whatever obstacle, whatever's in your way, is seeing it as a positive rather than a negative, which was kind of cool. And then the action of like taking the proper steps you need to feel, basically to move forward. And then the will, just being disciplined essentially and being able to move it forward. And yeah, that was a good book. So I think what I'm going to do on this channel too, or this podcast, is what I want to do is I think I want to do a book reading list, just like book summaries, so I can summarize kind of my take and my thoughts on some of these books that I've read over the past few years. So I think this will be good. But yeah, so that's a few things that were thought provoking that I didn't really know at the time that have probably impacted me more than about anything. So, okay, cool. So episode 25. So this is Greg. So Greg, he's another game night person. So he was the last of our game night buddies. We started with David, then we went with Max, and then finally got Greg on it. We had to reschedule quite a few times just because of we'd have it planned and then something would come up and whatever. We ended up getting it done, and it was awesome. Because Greg, we have a few things in common, right? So we're into obviously board games, miniatures games, but we also both play guitar, and yeah, there's just a lot of things there. And he's a little more introverted, but what was really neat about his podcast is I loved, and I don't know if he'll like me saying this, but I loved how nervous he was. So when he first hopped on, like he was super nervous, and he expressed it on the podcast. But what's neat is the fact that he was nervous and was like kind of afraid to do it. And then we started talking a little bit, and he felt more comfortable. And then his episode was probably one of the, in my opinion, one of the deeper ones that I thought was just, I took a lot out of it, right? We started talking about depression and connecting in different ways, and it was just fascinating. So it was really cool that even though he felt, nervous, he still persevered through that and had a good conversation. So that was really cool. So, whew, sneeze. Okay. So his question was, if you could have lunch with one historical figure, who would it be and why? Historical figure. I don't think a lot about history, to be real with you. So, yeah, I don't really know. I'm kind of more of a future thinker. So it's either I'm present or I'm thinking about like what could be, not necessarily thinking about what was. So I don't really have anybody per se. it would be interesting. Just I don't know, like going and seeing like the Roman Empire at its peak would be kind of cool, I guess. But so I guess maybe meeting the emperor and stuff would be, I guess, kind of interesting. I don't know. It's just I've never thought about that too much. So, I mean, guess that's it. Yeah, I guess maybe just seeing what that was like, because they had a pretty innovative society at that time, and it'd be interesting to see how it actually functioned. Because I know we have historical documents and we have historical evidence of how things were. It'd be actually kind of neat to see how it really was. Um, yeah, I guess that would be it. A historical figure would just be going and seeing like Marcus Aurelius or something. So yeah, that'd be fascinating. I would actually would like to do that because Marcus Aurelius, he was like one of the guys behind Stoicism. I think that would be fun just to hear his perspective because he was such a powerful leader. But according to his writings and stuff that according to some of his writings, like he talked a lot about the struggles he had and just kind of like this, the Stoic philosophy and how he maneuvered through it. So, yeah, so that would actually be my answer. Took me a while to get there, but that would work. Okay, so next, this is Danny Kubas. So, Danny, so I worked with him. So he was my boss when I was a trainer for the territory when I worked with Nike. What was cool is like when he first got hired on, I remember setting up a conversation, just chatting and realizing we had a lot in common, just as far as music and stoicism and just all that stuff. We just vibed a lot on a lot of those details. So it was kind of cool to chat about that because even the book I just mentioned, Obstacle is the Way, and talk about Marcus Aurelius, like that's the stuff that we were chatting about, like our day one conversation. But yeah, so his episode, he talked a lot about, kind of his, I know he talked about marathons and all the stuff he's achieved in that space, talked a lot about his, his family and, his struggle with, relationships in the past and how that was really, difficult for him. And I relate with that. That was, I think as far as life goes so far, those have always been the most difficult parts for me. It's just like relationships in general, is how people can be in your life 1 minute and then be gone. And sometimes we're looking for closure, trying to understand why, and there really isn't anything to know, right? It just happens. So his thing was, what is the happy 5-year-older version of you doing? And I'd say the 5-year-older version of me doing. So I would say I will be, I'll have a house, so my own place. I will be performing music, some of the, my band Music Nightmare Nevermore, recording new albums. So I'll have 2 new albums by then with new material and stuff that's awesome, that's played on Spotify, and people gaining count there. The podcast is going to be really successful, and I'll be doing touring and doing actual like live shows essentially about the podcast, which would be pretty cool. And then yeah, I will have went overseas. I've never been overseas. It'd be fun to go, to have been over in Europe and a few places like that. So that is and I will be, probably married again with, who knows, maybe another kid or something. So yeah, it seems like a pretty happy 5-year-older version of me. So episode 27. So this is Ryan. And Ryan, so he's one of the first people, I mean, not the first, one of the first people that I really connected with or met at, my new position. So, and we connected like day one. So it was literally like, tell us a little bit about yourself. And immediately I was like, yeah, I play music, yada, yada, yada. And he's just like, oh, what do you play? And I was like, mellow music. And he's like, yeah. And we literally bonded there because he's a metalhead too. So we connected in that space about our music styles. And then, both talked about like, what do you play? And it's like, I sing, play guitar. Like, do you scream? Yep. He's like, oh, me too. And it was just like instant bond. And then from there, we've been we talk about all our favorite bands all the time. We talk about movie because he films movies, so it was fun to pick his brain on that and talk movies. And yeah, we connected really well, and like we vibe. So yeah, if you get us together too long, we won't stop talking. So it's fun. But what I liked about his podcast is what he got on is he it took a little bit to schedule that, but once we got it, like it was neat to just kind of sit there, have the conversation. And obviously we talked a lot about film, which I figured we would. We talked about music, which I figured. But what he did is he opened up and got really deep about how he struggled with depression. I thought that was very insightful because it's something that he's no longer has. He no longer has depression, but he had it for like his whole life. And just hearing what he went through and how he overcame it was just super powerful material. So I loved hearing that. So Ryan, his question was, if you could be anyone from history, who would you be? And I don't know. I really don't know because I don't know if I would be anybody but me. I mean, I don't know. It depends if I could put my mind and thoughts into that person. So I'd say that it'd be kind of fun to get put back in the knowing what I know about music and metal and stuff like that, like actually inserting myself back in, like the 50s, 50s, 60s maybe, and just really, I guess I'd have to take some of my stuff with me, though, my gear, but, kind of metal riffage would be just kind of fun because it would be, I don't know who I would be, but it'd be fun to be someone from that era and just, playing something that hasn't been played yet and just seeing what would happen, right? If that would that kickstart, would the music be way different now, or would it really not affect much? I don't know, but I think that would be kind of fascinating is to go back and do that. Okay, episode 28. So this was Rob. So Rob, this was actually the fastest episode turnaround that I've ever done. So, and it was awesome. So Rob's super positive guy, very outgoing. He's someone I met with Nike in the past, but it had been like 5 or 6 years since I've seen him. And just noticed that he was posting a lot of stuff on Facebook and just reached out and was like, hey, would you want to be on a podcast? He said, sure. And, the rest is history essentially. And what was cool is I was actually didn't have any podcasts finished and ready to go for future weeks. And he came in and was literally just like I can do it this day. And we did it on the Thursday night. I was like, hey man, if you can get me some pictures and some clips for the slideshow at the beginning, I'll edit all the material and I'll put it out tomorrow. And he did. He got it all out, and I stayed up, later, and got it all finished, and we released it the next day. So I haven't had to do that before. Usually I have a week at least. Some of the episodes, like there was a time where I was, man, 6 or 7 episodes deep, to where, I mean, they'd come on the podcast and be like, hey, so your episode will debut in a month and a half. It's like, okay, cool. And it was nice living that way. But yeah, so I've had to really get after it. But but his episode was cool too, because he talked about, obviously we have weightlifting in common. So we talked a lot about lifting and how fitness kind of changed, both of our lives. But he also talked about growing up and how his, he had an absent father. And he also talked about how his mom struggled with drug addiction, and that was tough, because it's something that, just knowing him, I would have never guessed that that was what his childhood was like. Because he's a stand-up guy, right? He's real sharp, real kind, really outgoing. You just would never expect that. So it was fun to see him, see how even through that and those struggles, that he made a different decision, right? He didn't fall into being a drug addict essentially, or an absent father. Instead, he's got a wife and a child, and his goal is to be for them what he didn't get. So that was pretty powerful. Okay, so I magically changed outfits really quick. So okay, okay, sweet. So this is what I was saying. So Rob's question was, if you had one wish from a genie, what would it be? And he specified it can't be asking for more wishes. So let's see. So if I had a wish from a genie, that's a tough one. That's actually a really tough one, because it's like, would I wish for something specific? I mean, I don't know, because I think his answer was like $1 billion or something like that. I'm like, it's not bad. That's actually a pretty good answer. Because if you get money like that, then you could do anything you want. You can get a house, some land, um, yeah, and kind of just pursue the things that you want to pursue. So that would be kind of cool. So I would say maybe that, or I don't know, maybe being able to write music full time and perform and have everybody hear it. That might be it. It's either that or money. Either way. So I didn't think I would pick that answer, but that's it's about where I'm at right now. So okay, so episode 29. So this was Linda, which is actually my grandma. So I had her on, and she's the sweetest. So when we, like, I just remember growing up, and I had like the most fun with her. I just remember us going out, and we had similar interests. Like she would take me like um yard sale shopping. I used to work over at a restaurant with her when I was a little kid, and it was just lots of fun. I just remember just always having a good time with her. She'd always just show up, and it would kind of just disrupt like whatever was going on, because it'd be like, I'd just be sitting at home or doing whatever, and then be like, hey, you want to go do something? I'd be like, yep, that sounds fun. I just remember always showing her like movie clips and music and just all types of stuff. And she was always game for all of it, for listening to all of it. And it was just, it felt really good hanging out with her. So, and I know hers, she talked a lot about her family, and kind of like the struggles she grew up with, which I didn't even know about, which was really cool to hear about, like things she went through, and then hearing about the stuff my grandpa went through that's no longer with us. So I didn't realize some of those stories that she shared. Like I didn't realize he had a tumor, and I didn't realize some of those things. So it was kind of cool to listen and hear. And then I know she's writing a book right now, and looking forward to reading it. So I hope she gets it finished soon so I can check it out. But her question was, are you doing what you love, and explain? And I would say yes. I would say I'm doing, because I didn't realize that I love training people, but I do have like training aspect, like teaching, coaching, training, etc. And that's what I do for my current role. So I get to use my creative side to create content that's going to impact people in a positive way, but I get to do it in a creative manner that kind of makes sense to me and that I see fit, which is really cool. And then I get to teach people, which I love, just giving, like I love learning and then giving people that extra knowledge that potentially could help them, or a different point of view or perspective. Because I think we get caught up in just always following like the common narrative, or what he said, she said stuff. And I think there's something powerful about digging into some of the literature, studying some of the stuff, and just at least seeing how things can be different. So I like having that alternate perspective. So yeah, so I like doing what I do. I think that's cool with the work. The podcast I enjoy a lot. So, and I get a lot of satisfaction after interviewing these guests. And I think my favorite part is, like, one, just getting to know people on a different level, but also just seeing how thrilled and excited they are to share their story. And I think that's one of the coolest parts is, being thanked from different people on this podcast and all this stuff. And it's really like, I'm just like, you all are helping me as much as I'm helping you. You know what I mean? So like, it's, I'm just grateful that they wanted to be guests and want to be part of this podcast, because I think there's power in sharing your story. So, yeah, so that's been pretty cool. And then other than that, we're doing music again. We're trying to nail down a practice. It's been tough because our schedules, and we don't live that close, but it's still a goal. Still, the goal is to get some practice under our belt, get some performances again. So the fact that music is still at least plays some role right now in my life is really important to me. And eventually I want it to be a little bit more. I think that'd be really fun to be able to perform again, write again, and just have that, that creative collaboration and stuff again. So yeah, so I'd say I am doing what I love, and I haven't always done what I love, but I've always been able to find something that I love within the thing. And I think that's something you all got to think about too, is I know some people work jobs, or we do things that we hate or we don't like, but I challenge you to try to find a part of that job or that situation that is enjoyable, and figure out why. Ask yourself why it's enjoyable. That might lead you to a good path. So why I say that is, like, there were plenty of jobs that I worked at. I mean, even Nike was one of them that I worked at for a while, and there was a stint there where I didn't like my job at all. But I did find out different ways about my job that I did like, or different things. What happened is I opened up new opportunities to do the thing I like. So, because retail work is tough anyway. So anybody that's worked retail work, especially for a busy company, it's challenging stuff actually. Um, and I've done construction work and all types of stuff. It's just a different type of challenge. But doing that, and then there were just times where hours sucked. Working weekends, nights. Uh, you know, helping people's fine, but just the way you go about it, we have, sometimes customers aren't the greatest, unfortunately, right? People show up on bad days or try to take things or whatever, and it just doesn't lead to a good scenario. But yeah, when I was there was a knowledge aspect. So it's like learning about the innovation that the company had was really cool. And that's really what turned me on to that company, because I worked there for a couple of years before I realized there was that they were such big players in innovation. And then two, being able to teach people. And that's like what I said, I enjoy teaching, but I wouldn't have known that had I not thought about that. And it's funny because at the time I didn't. So at the time I remember training people, teaching people. I got a lot of satisfaction out of that, and being able to kind of do it on my own terms. Not being told like, hey, go train this person, go train, like that happens sometimes, but being able to I just always cultivated, this game plan so that I could do what I wanted to do essentially in that space. So I just remember, training people, and that was what I found that I enjoyed about it. And it's funny because it wasn't until years and years later when I was actually doing some self-reflection in this sheet basically that they gave us, or this workbook, and we were going through it and doing a lot of self-reflection, which I did a little bit of self-reflection. It was more like self-analyzing, not as much reflecting on certain things or gathering feedback from people. So I hadn't done that a lot. So like when people would say, hey, think about the past, or think about when you showed up well, or all this stuff, like I was like, I don't even know. Like, I feel like I'm always good, because I never did it before. I never really reflected on some of that stuff. So it wasn't until later I realized that I actually really enjoy training people. So to shortcut that is what I'm saying is like in the moment that you're at right now, even if you don't like what you do, what is the thing you do like doing, and how can you do more of it? I think that's an important thing that you can do. And I think you will probably realize that you have more say in what you do than you think you do, especially if you formulate a game plan and you pitch it, right? If you pitch a halfway thought out plan, people are probably going to say no. But if you actually think it through, how it's going to be beneficial for you, for them, how it impacts people, I think you'd be surprised the opportunities that'll open up in that space. So yeah, it's all that to say, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Okay, and then the last one. So this was episode 30, and this was with Craig and Dennis. So this was the first time I did dual guests, because I like to do typically single guests. Just it's more personal, I guess. But this one was great. This was a fun time because we had some stuff in common that was fun to reminisce about. So so I knew them both from Nike. We both worked together, and we just had some silly stories. I think what I like so much about that podcast episode is that I was laughing like the whole time, just thinking about some of the dumb stuff that we did back in the day. I mean, I don't know. What were we thinking? But at the same time, I wouldn't change a bit. I think it was fun. But like punching boxes and sandwiches and all types of stuff, all these fun games that we used to play. And it was a good time. So I really enjoyed that conversation. And the cool thing is Dennis, I've kept in communication with pretty decently, at least for the most part. We've hung out a few times. But Craig, we didn't keep in touch too much. So besides like every once in a while, it might be like a Happy Thanksgiving or Merry Christmas or something like that. But it was just fun to really chat with him again. And it's like, same Craig, and it's so fun to chat about that. And I learned a lot about them too. So their episode, they talked talked a lot about Nike, talked a lot about struggles. But I remember, one of his struggles, Craig's, when he was mentioning like depression and stuff. I had no idea. About that. I don't think Dennis knew about it either, and we were friends. So it was kind of interesting to hear what was going on in his internal world that nobody knew about. So yeah, it was very, very cool. And he got a little, he got a little teary-eyed too when he was talking about that stuff, because it really was, it was a deep thing, and it's cool that he made it through it too. Like he made it through and doesn't struggle with that anymore. But I would have never guessed. But their question, which was really funny actually, to try to get both of them to agree on a thumbnail first of all, so something like that, and then also agree on a question. But the question they did end up agreeing on was, what's one decision that changed your life completely? And it's funny because I was just talking on a podcast episode recently about the small changes that we make and how even the smallest of decisions can just bring about this whole new trajectory and a whole new path that maybe you didn't expect. So I would say that my life has been full of a lot of those. Everything from, I'd say, the choice of, we could, the choice of, even like playing guitar. Let's go back to early years here, but like, playing guitar, for instance, if my dad wouldn't have bought this guitar and not played it, and if I wouldn't have had a bunch of people around me trying to play guitar and had that competitive nature of like, well, I'm going to learn it too, and decided to do it, I wouldn't maybe be playing music now, So like that was some of it, and being able to stick with it. And then that opened up the doors for all this other instrumentation that I learned, and then opening up the doors to writing music. And I can't imagine a life where I didn't know how to write music, or play music or write music or whatever. That's pretty wild. And then the decisions of like, my, getting married back in the day, of like just responding to a text message. It was a mass text just connecting, and then meeting up when everybody bailed to hang out, and then forming that relationship. And, I was married for 12 years. And during that I had Rachel, and we're not together anymore. But when I think about that, it's like, it's kind of wild to think about that. Like, if that small decision didn't happen, I may not have my daughter right now, which is kind of wild to think about. And then, this job was a great example, because when I was trying to get jobs, I got laid off, from Nike. So that wasn't my choice, but it was kind of crazy getting laid off, not knowing what I was going to do, and just looking through LinkedIn all the time, just not finding anything. And then the minute that this job posting popped up as an email, so just as a little notification, I was literally looked at it and was like, construction industry? No way. Why would I work in the construction industry again? And then scrolled down and decided to actually read the thing. The description was like, okay, well, this lines up. And then deciding to actually like, well, should I not? Should I? Sure. I'll apply for it. And then, come to find out I'm working there, and it's been like amazing. It's been an awesome environment. It's been fun to work there. It's been fun also just to, see the team there and how we all collaborate. I think it's kind of cool. It's much needed, and it feels mutual, right? It feels like they need me as much as I need them, and I think that's a really cool place to be in a job. But yeah, there's just been so many decisions. I don't think I can think of just one, and I'm sure I could go on and on and on and talk about that question. But sometimes it is the smallest decisions that lead to the biggest things, and they can be positive, or you could say negative. But even the negative ones, the negative things, they have consequences, yes, but sometimes they still lead us on a trajectory that is for the best, right? And it's weird, and we can't think about it in that time, because in that time, a lot of times there's just so much emotion wrapped up in it. But I'm sure there's been moments in your life that you kind of are thankful for that happened, that were really tough moments. So it's like being grateful for all those things. So yeah, so that's it. So that was all 30 episodes. So, or all the last 10 episodes from 21 to 30. So I know I'm releasing this a little late. We just released, I think, episode 36. So 4 more episodes and we'll hit 40. And I got a couple booked and scheduled that are coming up, and still looking. And then when we get to 40, I'll do a whole new set of questions. So hopefully you enjoy this, because I wanted to, as you all are taking me on the journey of your stories, I wanted you to take a journey through mine, right, by answering the guest questions, because I think that's always a cool thing that you can do, so I can answer those. So yeah, so appreciate it. Thank you all. It's fun doing this. Let me know in the comments any other questions that you might have, because I can always add questions to these too. And eventually when the podcast grows, I would love to take actual, like, not just the guests that are on here's question, but the people watching as well. I would love to answer all your questions too, so you can ask kind of whatever you want. So, but feel free to drop questions in the comments, like and subscribe. We're continuing to grow this channel. We keep getting more and more people. And it's thankful to all you guys that watch and being able to post it and share it. Just really grateful. So thank you all so much, and catch y'all in another video.